choose to work in the suburbs rather than the heart of the capital. Personally, as I said before, I don't think London's in danger because there are so many other things that draw people into the centre apart from work. But I'm worried about other towns and cities. Will they be changed irrevocably? Have you worked from home? Are you desperate to get back and meet people back in the office? Do you miss the social contact, or do you just love it in the way that things have changed? You don't have to do that dreadful commute anymore. 0345 6060 973 is the number to ring. Ring now, you get through. Let me just read out one text here. I finished, doesn't say who it is, I finished my bachelor's degree in London in 2019 and my master's this year in Belfast. After applying for many jobs during the pandemic, many jobs are still making a point of returning back to office-based work in London. In terms of opportunities, London still remains the #1 destination for young graduates, and I plan on moving back there once I secure a job. We will see a return to office-based working. Some jobs really depend on me. As I was in Clapham today, and I was like, everybody's under the age of 30 here. It's amazing. It's an extraordinary place in South London. Right, let's talk about the United States. It looks as if the inevitable is happening. The Trump camp still haven't conceded defeat in the election, despite a judge saying that their lawsuit to try and get a recount in Pennsylvania cannot go ahead. So guess what? They're going to appeal that. Let's speak to Charles Ellison. He's a political strategist. He's the host of a daily public affairs program on Word Radio in Philadelphia, a very important part of the United States vis-a-vis the election. Again, I mean, how many more times can Trump slot appeal and appeal and appeal, Charles?
Right, how are you doing? Yeah, good to be on here. You're absolutely right. I mean, that's the big question. When you look at the trajectory of these cases, first, let's establish here, you've got about 30 different lawsuits that the Trump campaign has filed. 30 different lawsuits, but they're not really going anywhere. And for a variety of reasons, this is what we're seeing now in terms of the landscape. 30 different lawsuits. None of them have really gotten past the initial preliminary hearing stage. The Pennsylvania lawsuit, which was sort of almost like a linchpin for all those other lawsuits, the Pennsylvania lawsuit needed to work, but a federal judge threw that out, and it's a federal judge who was also supported by, or his appointment was helped by, a very conservative Republican senator in the state of Pennsylvania. So even though that federal judge is a President Obama appointee, and you're probably going to have some people in the Trump team say that it was a conservative Republican who helped him get appointed there. So lack of hearings on these 30 different lawsuits. The federal judges, not just in Pennsylvania, but in a number of other places, are not showing appetite for litigating these types of cases. In fact, they're starting to throw them out because there's no evidence of fraud. At the end of the day, you need evidence of fraud, and every lawsuit that the Trump campaign is filing is baseless. It's not based in fact.
Yeah, with it. I mean, I think in Pennsylvania, Biden leads by 80,000 votes, so that's going to be difficult to overturn. Rudy Giuliani, however, said in a statement he'll appeal against the ruling. Today's decision turns out to help us in our strategy to get expeditiously to the US Supreme Court. How can he think that?
He's thinking, they're thinking, like if you go through the appeals, go through a federal district court, then it goes through a federal appeals court, and then if a federal appeals court feels that there's some sort of base of fact, then they'll send it to the Supreme Court. I just don't see that happening. There were already about 3 different election security or election fraud or alleged election fraud cases or election process cases that the Trump campaign and Republicans have filed. The Supreme Court had a moment where this is before the election, to deliberate on it, and they passed on it. The Supreme Court itself is not showing an appetite, in addition to the very new Supreme Court nominee, the one that just got confirmed, Amy Coney Barrett. She actually self-recused herself from a batch of election cases from North Carolina and also from Pennsylvania. There's just all sorts of mounting evidence showing that this Supreme Court, this federal judiciary, is not interested in these cases. And certification of the Electoral College happens on December 14th. We're already coming up on deadlines. Monday, Pennsylvania, Michigan, for example, they are certifying their elections.
Right, that's going to be my next and last question. What is the timescale for this, and when can the shutters finally come down on it all?
It's going to be December 14th. That's when the Electoral College, the electors meet, and they certify this election. We're not seeing any real indications or hints or signals that there will be what's called faithless electors, persons who are electors.
But even that decision, can that be contested in court as well?
That can be contested in court as well, and different states have penalties. Different states have penalties for faithless electors. There's this, the people are worried a little bit about maybe a few faithless electors out there who say, hey, you know what, we're going to vote for Trump, even though the electorate in our state said we wanted to vote for Joe Biden. But then they have to suffer severe civil penalties, and a few states criminal penalties. They could get fined like $1,000 if they vote against the electorate. So I just don't see that happening.
I'm afraid I dissembled. That wasn't my last question because I suddenly thought of another one. Yeah, we're debating here this hour whether or not the nature of city centres and the way that we all live on top of each other is changing. Yeah. People working from home, people not commuting anymore because of social distancing. Is that a debate you're having in America, or does everyone think we'll just get back to normal?
We are. I think that you're going to find that the future of work landscape has to be more agile. It's all about agility and innovation, and so I think it's going to be a hybrid mix. I myself am working out of home, but I think it's going to take a real severe impact on the real estate industry. But I think that over time, you're going to see over the next 5 years, you're going to see a mix of C-suite, managerial, intellectual, academic type professionals, and definitely comfortable working out of home. But there's real questions about what this does to the lower income, essential frontline worker class. Where are they? Where do they live? How are the jobs for them in the city, or are they out in the suburbs? And what sort of transportation options do they have? There's a lot of serious questions around that.
There is. Excellent. Thank you, Charles. Charles Ellison, who's a political strategist and hosts a World Affairs program on Word Radio in Philadelphia. I think the digital age, the way in which communication is now much easier to meet, to talk, to discuss. As I said, I'm taking part in a sort of pub quiz, but it's a virtual pub quiz that has been organised by a friend who lives in Uruguay on Monday. So I think it'll work fine, but it just shows you what is possible in this day and age. I'm wondering whether the debate about whether or not city centres would collapse, would we even be having this discussion if we didn't have digital innovation as we have now? It's a really interesting one in the way that the world is changing as fast as it has changed, certainly in my lifetime and maybe in yours too. So, do you work from home, and are you prepared to continue to work from home for good? Or will you eventually revert back to working in the office? If you run a company, would you like everyone to be back in the office as normal? I know here people would, the bosses would like us to be back in the office. Whether it's necessarily going to be the most important thing, the business seems to have run on all our various radio stations fine without everyone being in this office. It's a very interesting question. Evelina is in Virginia Water, and you love working from home, don't you? I love it.
Yes, I absolutely love working from home. I have been working from home since March. I actually started a new job in May, so also working from home.
What do you do?
I work in insurance, so it's the finance sector, so it is a job that can be easily done, working from home, because all I really need is my laptop and an internet connection.
Okay.
So I obviously appreciate that it does depend on the type of work you do, but for me, a commute to my office is 90 minutes each way, so that's 3 hours a day wasted.
Yeah.
That's 15 hours a week. Yeah. That is so much time that I can do so many different things with, which I much better than waiting for a train.
What about the social contact that you've lost?
I have to say, I don't really think that the price of having to commute into London is worth paying for the social aspect of working in an office. So if it was my choice, I would love to carry on working from home 5 days a week. I don't mind going in maybe once a month or something. Obviously it would have to be a day where, we'd agree that the whole team went in, otherwise it's a bit like, what's the point? But to be fair as well, I do think that it probably depends on your circumstances. I'm in my late 30s and I have a nice house with a nice garden, so it's very easy to say that. But I appreciate if you're, young and maybe new to London and your social life does revolve around the office and you're in a flat shirt.
Well, you see, that it may not be the most important subject, but it will be to some people, and that is, you know, the office romance looks like it's dead. Is it over, Evelina?
Well,